The Galactic fleet had been victorious. For years, they had been conquering star systems one by one. And now, the war was almost over. The commanders stood on the massive bridge of their flagship, looking out at the endless stars through the large windows. There was a sense of peace in the air. They had done it. The galaxy was finally under their control. The rebellious civilizations had been crushed, their resistance broken. The fleet's power was unmatched, and they believed no force in the universe could stand against them now. Across the fleet, the commanders, soldiers, and crews celebrated. Drinks flowed, laughter echoed, and even the ships seemed to hum with a newfound energy. After so many years of conflict and fear, they could now finally rest. They had defeated all their enemies, and the galaxy was theirs. The commanders discussed their next moves, planning how they would rule this new galaxy. They were certain there would be no more challenges. On the flagship, Commander Valen stood at the center of the bridge, surveying the victory. His chest puffed with pride. He had led the Galactic fleet to this moment. He was respected, feared, and now he was a hero. The war had been long and brutal, but it had all paid off. The planets and species that had dared to oppose them were either destroyed or subjugated. Now all that was left was to set up the final systems of control. "Send a message to the core worlds," Valen said to his communications officer. "Let them know we've secured another victory. The galaxy is ours." The officer nodded and began typing commands into the console. The message was brief but clear. Victory achieved. The Galactic fleet is supreme. Valen smiled as he watched the words appear on the screen. A small part of him couldn't help but feel a thrill from the power they had gained. The galaxy, with all its vastness and strange worlds, was now under their command. But just as the celebration began to reach its peak, a strange signal appeared on the communications screen. It was weak at first, a faint echo from deep space, but it grew louder as the seconds passed. The officer who had just sent the message to the core worlds looked up, puzzled. "Commander," the officer said, his voice filled with uncertainty, "there's something strange happening with our systems. We're picking up a signal from an unknown source." Valen turned and narrowed his eyes. The galaxy had been conquered. No one could possibly be out there to threaten them now, not with their strength. Yet this signal, faint and almost garbled, seemed to be coming from a distant corner of the galaxy. "Is it a distress call?" Valen asked. "No, sir," the officer replied. "It's too strange. It doesn't follow any known patterns. It's almost like a message, but we can't make it out." Valen frowned. The signal was unsettling. If there were still unknown threats out there, it could complicate everything. He knew that the fleet had enemies who were still hiding, waiting for a chance to strike. But surely no one could survive for so long in the shadows, right? "Can you trace the origin?" Valen asked, his mind now focused on this unknown presence. The officer nodded, his fingers moving rapidly across the console. The screen flickered as the data was analyzed, but it was no use. The signal source was too far to pinpoint with their current technology. The message was being broadcasted across a broad range, almost as if it were intentionally trying to be heard by anyone who would listen. "I'm sorry, Commander," the officer said, his voice now tinged with concern. "We can't trace it, but it's coming from beyond our mapped territory. We'll need more time." Valen's thoughts raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. The war was over. The galaxy was under their control. Nothing at all, should be able to threaten their victory now. He gritted his teeth and stepped closer to the officer's console. The signal was strange and disconcerting, but Valen knew they couldn't ignore it. If something was out there, they needed to investigate. "Get the fleet ready to move," he commanded, his voice cold and determined. "We'll find out what this is. It might just be a fluke, but we can't afford to take chances. Prepare a small scout group and send them to the source. It's probably nothing, but we won't take risks." As the officer worked to put the orders into action, Valen stood at the front of the bridge, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. His mind was torn between the certainty of victory and the creeping suspicion that something, somewhere, was beginning to stir. Something unknown, something that might just change everything. The rest of the fleet remained oblivious to the tension on the flagship. Their celebrations continued, unaware of the growing uncertainty that was beginning to fill the air. But for Valen, the sense of victory felt different now. It was as if the ground beneath him was beginning to shift, and he had no idea what would come next. The unknown signal had planted a seed of doubt in his mind, one that would only grow stronger as the next days passed. And somewhere, far in the depths of space, something was waiting, something that had been quiet for far too long. What it was, Valen had no idea, but soon he would learn. Earth had been quiet for many years, a planet far removed from the chaos of galactic war. Its people had lived their lives, unaware of the vast conflicts taking place beyond their skies. But as the galactic fleet continued its relentless march across the galaxy, Earth had been preparing in silence. Hidden beneath layers of secrecy, humanity's brightest minds had been working tirelessly, developing technologies that would allow them to defend their home and reclaim their place in the universe. The people of Earth had never been in the forefront of the war. They had watched as distant worlds fell to the might of the fleet, their governments powerless to stop the invaders. But in the shadows, a group of visionary scientists and military leaders had banded together, knowing that one day Earth would need to stand up for itself. Their goal was simple: to create a fleet of warships powerful enough to strike back at the galactic fleet and protect their planet. For years, the world's governments had secretly funded research and development of advanced weapons systems, harnessing the best technology Earth had to offer. The warships that began to take shape in hidden underground facilities were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The technology was based on a mixture of humanity's best engineering minds and an unexpected discovery: alien technology recovered from the wreckage of a ship long lost to the stars. The warships, sleek and silent, were unlike anything the galactic fleet had encountered. The first prototype, codenamed Sentinel, had been a leap in technology. It was built to be faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the fleet had ever seen. Powered by energy sources unknown to the galaxy, the Sentinel was equipped with weapons capable of piercing through the shields of even the strongest warships. It was designed to strike fast, hit hard, and vanish before the enemy even knew what happened. But the Sentinel was only the beginning. Over the years, Earth's engineers had created a whole fleet of these warships, each more advanced than the last. They were hidden away on distant, uncharted moons, their locations unknown to the galactic fleet. Earth's greatest minds had carefully orchestrated the construction of these ships, ensuring that when the time came, the fleet would be ready. Captain Alina Mitchell stood on the command bridge of the largest Earth warship ever built, Titan. She gazed out the viewports, watching the stars flicker by as the ship silently glided through space. It was the flagship of Earth's new fleet, and Mitchell had been chosen to lead them. She was one of the few people on Earth who knew the true scale of what was happening. The galactic fleet may have believed they had won, but they had no idea what was coming. Earth had been planning, and now it was time to strike. Mitchell was not alone. Alongside her were the commanders of Earth's other warships, each as determined and resolute as she was. They knew the stakes were high. Earth's survival depended on their ability to surprise the galactic fleet, to strike before the enemy could react. The warships were small in number compared to the galactic fleet's vast armada, but they had the element of surprise on their side. And they had one thing that no one else in the galaxy had: human determination. The plan was simple. Earth's fleet would emerge from the shadows, hitting the galactic fleet in their most vulnerable areas. The Titan would lead the charge, its weapons capable of crippling entire fleets with a single shot. The smaller warships would harry the galactic fleet, picking off stragglers and causing chaos. The goal was to disrupt the galactic fleet's operations long enough to create an opening. With Earth's warships striking swiftly, the galactic fleet would be thrown into disarray, unsure of where the next attack would come from. But even with all their preparation, there was still a sense of uncertainty. Earth's warships had never fought a full-scale battle against the Galactic fleet. They had no idea how the fleet would respond. Would they underestimate humanity's resolve, or would they retaliate with overwhelming force? Mitchell stood at the command center, watching as the fleet prepared for its mission. Her mind was filled with questions, but she knew that the time for doubt had passed. The plan was in motion. Earth's fate would be decided in the next few hours. As the fleet moved closer to the target zone, Mitchell gathered her crew. She looked at their faces, seeing a mix of fear and determination. They knew the risks, but they also knew the importance of what they were about to do. "We may be outnumbered, but we are not outmatched," Mitchell said, her voice firm and unwavering. "We've trained for this moment, and now it's time to show the galaxy what humanity can do. Our enemies think we're weak. They think we're just a small planet in the corner of the galaxy. But today we'll prove them wrong. Today, Earth strikes back." The crew nodded, their faces set with resolve. They had been waiting for this moment for so long, and now it was here. As the fleet entered the dark expanse of space, they moved in unison, each ship a deadly shadow. Earth's warships, with their sleek designs and deadly firepower, were a force that the Galactic fleet had never seen before. Back on Earth, the world's leaders were anxiously watching the progress of their fleet. They had put everything into this effort, and now they could only wait and hope. The people of Earth were ready to fight. They had been living in fear for far too long. Now it was time to take a stand. As Earth's fleet neared the Galactic fleet's territory, the officers aboard the flagship Titan readied their weapons. The time for secrecy was over. Earth's warships would make their presence known to the galaxy, and with one swift strike, they would send a message. Earth was not to be underestimated. The battle was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic fleet had been celebrating their triumph for days. It was a victory they had worked hard for, and they believed that the galaxy was finally at peace under their control. The fleet's officers and commanders felt untouchable, their confidence swelling with every passing moment. They had crushed their enemies, and now they were simply enjoying the fruits of their conquest. The ships moved with purpose across the galaxy, reorganizing and preparing to maintain order. Everything seemed under control, and the fleet believed nothing could threaten their dominance. Yet something about the strange signal from earlier nagged at Commander Valen's mind. The message had come from an unknown source, and even though he tried to dismiss it as an error, a lingering doubt began to form in the back of his mind. He wasn't a man to be easily shaken, but he had seen enough battles to know that ignoring even the smallest warning could lead to disaster. Valen stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes focused on the galaxy outside. His fingers drummed lightly on the armrest of his chair as he reviewed the latest tactical reports. The fleet was in good shape, and there were no immediate threats on the horizon. But that signal, it was still there, echoing in his thoughts. It hadn't been a distress call, nor did it resemble any communication the Galactic fleet had ever encountered. It felt strange, almost alien, but not in the way that they were accustomed to. It was different. "Commander," the communications officer spoke up, drawing Valen's attention away from his thoughts. "We've picked up another signal. It's the same source as before. It's getting stronger." Valen's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this. He thought it would have faded by now. "Is it coming from the same location?" Valen asked, standing up from his chair and moving toward the officer's console. "Yes, sir," the officer replied, furiously typing in commands. "It seems to be broadcasting from deep within unexplored space. It's not in any of our map systems." Valen's brow furrowed. The Galactic fleet's intelligence had mapped nearly every corner of the galaxy. The signal had to be coming from somewhere outside the fleet's radar. He had never encountered anything like this before. "Prepare a small reconnaissance fleet," Valen ordered. "I want them to investigate. If this is a threat, we need to deal with it immediately. We can't afford any surprises." The officer nodded and began sending the orders across the fleet. It wasn't a large group of ships, just enough to gather information and return quickly. The idea was to get to the source of the signal, determine if it was truly a threat, and eliminate it before it could cause any problems. Valen didn't believe for a second that this was something to worry about, but his instincts told him not to ignore it. The reconnaissance fleet, consisting of 5 ships, departed the flagship, heading toward the unknown. Valen stood at the front of the bridge, his arms crossed over his chest, his mind turning over possible explanations. Who, or what, was sending these signals? Was it just some form of communication, or was it an attempt to lure them into a trap? As the fleet moved deeper into unexplored space, the communication systems on the reconnaissance ships started to crackle with static. The signal continued to grow stronger, and the tension among the crew members began to build. They were heading into uncharted territory, a place where no galactic fleet vessel had ever ventured before. The feeling of unease spread quickly. Everyone on the ships knew that they were far from help, and if anything went wrong, they would be alone. On the flagship, Valen kept his eyes glued to the screens, watching the progress of the reconnaissance fleet. His gut told him something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He had sent his best officers and most capable ships on this mission, so he trusted their judgment. But the silence that had settled in the command center was unsettling. No one spoke. Everyone was focused on the same goal: discovering the source of the signal and ensuring the safety of the fleet. Hours passed before the reconnaissance fleet reached the source of the signal. The 5 ships dropped out of hyperspace, and for a moment there was nothing. No sign of life, no energy readings, nothing. The vast emptiness of space surrounded them, and the silence was suffocating. "We're in position," the lead officer of the reconnaissance fleet transmitted back to the flagship. "There's nothing here, Commander. No ships, no stations, nothing at all." Valen's grip tightened on the armrest. Something wasn't right. The signal had been coming from this location. He could feel it in his bones. It wasn't just a glitch. Suddenly, the screens lit up with an alarm. A massive energy signature appeared out of nowhere, far too close for comfort. The reconnaissance fleet scrambled to respond, but it was already too late. Earth's warships, built in secrecy and designed for surprise, emerged from the shadows of deep space. They were unlike anything the Galactic fleet had ever seen, sleek, deadly, and glowing with an ominous power. The Galactic fleet's ships were taken completely by surprise. They had no idea Earth had developed such a fleet, let alone that it was capable of reaching this far into the galaxy. The warship's weapons came to life, and the first blast struck with overwhelming force. One of the reconnaissance ships was hit instantly, its shields failing under the assault. The remaining ships scrambled to return fire, but it was futile. "Report," Valen barked, his voice tight with urgency. "We're receiving transmission from the lead ship, Commander," the communications officer said. "It's Earth. They've emerged from hyperspace." Valen's heart pounded. Earth had always been a distant, insignificant planet in the eyes of the Galactic fleet. But now, Earth's warships had appeared, and they were already making their presence known. The first attack was a brutal reminder of how wrong the fleet had been to underestimate humanity. "Prepare the fleet for battle," Valen ordered. "Send reinforcements to the reconnaissance fleet immediately. We cannot allow Earth's ships to escape." The Galactic fleet was no longer celebrating. The real battle was just beginning. The battle had erupted without warning, and the Galactic fleet found itself thrown into chaos. Commander Valen, who had been so certain of his superiority just days before, now stood at the helm of the flagship, staring at the glowing displays in disbelief. Earth's warships were like nothing the fleet had ever encountered. They moved with deadly precision, their weapons tearing through the Galactic fleet's defenses with a power that seemed unimaginable. It was as if Earth had been holding back a secret weapon. And now, that secret was unleashed in full force. The small fleet of reconnaissance ships had already been obliterated in mere moments, leaving behind nothing but debris scattered across the black expanse. Earth's warships, sleek and silent, were designed for speed and overwhelming firepower. Valen's fleet, despite its superior numbers, was unprepared for this kind of strike. Their systems were scrambling to adjust, but the damage had already begun. The first blow had landed, and it was only a matter of time before the entire fleet felt the full force of the Earth's counterattack. "Return fire," Valen shouted, his voice hoarse with urgency. "All ships, engage the enemy. Bring down their shields." But Earth's ships were faster than they had anticipated, dodging the barrage of plasma blasts from the Galactic fleet's warships. The Earth ships appeared to dance through the chaos of battle, avoiding most of the incoming fire. They were small and agile, darting between the larger vessels like shadows, striking when the time was right. The few shots they did take seemed to ricochet off their reinforced shields, as if their ships were made from materials the Galactic fleet had never seen before. The flagship's communication systems crackled to life, and a voice rang through the bridge. It was one of Earth's warships. "We are humanity," the voice said, cold and clear. "We are here to take back what is ours. Surrender now, or face annihilation." Valen's fist slammed against the armrest of his chair. The arrogance of these humans. They had no idea what they were up against. His fleet had decimated entire civilizations, leaving nothing in their wake. How could they, these insignificant humans, believe they could challenge the might of the Galactic fleet? "Do not listen to them," Valen barked. "Retaliate with full force. We will crush them. They cannot possibly match our numbers." The fleet responded, launching everything they had at the Earth warships. Dozens of plasma cannons fired simultaneously, targeting the nearest enemy ships. The blasts lit up the darkness of space, but Earth's warships simply glided through the storm, as if they were untouchable. It was like trying to catch a shadow. Meanwhile, on Earth's flagship, Titan, Captain Alina Mitchell stood at the command console, watching the live feed of the battle unfolding. Her face was set in grim determination. This was the moment they had been preparing for. The odds were against them, but the humans had fought through countless trials to get to this point. The fleet was outnumbered, yes, but they had one major advantage. They were faster, more maneuverable, and better equipped than anything the Galactic fleet had anticipated. "Status report," Mitchell ordered, her voice calm but firm. "Shields holding, Captain. Our main guns are online and targeting enemy ships," one of her officers replied. "Good. Maintain evasive maneuvers. We'll hit them where it hurts," Mitchell commanded. "Target their lead ships. Let them know we are not to be underestimated." The Titan shot forward, its engines humming with power as it closed in on one of the larger Galactic fleet vessels. Its weapons charged up, and with a thunderous roar, a massive energy beam shot out, slamming into the shields of the enemy ship. The impact caused the entire vessel to shake, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though the Galactic fleet was stunned. The power of Earth's weapons had sent a shockwave through the enemy's lines. "Direct hit, Captain," one of the officers called out. "Their shields are down." Mitchell's heart raced. The moment they had been waiting for had arrived. They had successfully breached the Galactic fleet's defenses, but this was only the beginning. They needed to strike fast before the Galactic fleet could regroup. "Deploy the strike teams," Mitchell ordered. "We need to hit their command centers, disrupt their leadership. We can't give them a chance to retaliate." The Titan maneuvered closer to the Galactic ship, while smaller Earth warships darted around, picking off smaller enemy vessels in hit-and-run tactics. The Galactic fleet was struggling to respond, and panic was starting to ripple through their ranks. For the first time in the war, they were on the back foot. They had never expected this level of resistance from Earth. On the bridge of the flagship, Valen's frustration grew. His command center was filled with reports of damage, broken systems, and destroyed ships. He had ordered all available ships to the front lines, but it was clear that the Earth warships were simply too skilled, too prepared. His once unshakable confidence was beginning to crumble. "Reinforcements are en route," Valen said, trying to reassure himself. We will turn this around. We cannot let a handful of human ships challenge the might of the fleet. But deep down, he knew it was not just a handful of ships anymore. Earth's fleet was relentless. They had broken through the outer defenses with ease, and their precision strikes were beginning to tear apart the Galactic fleet's forces. Valen's worst fear was coming to life. Earth, a planet he had written off as insignificant, was now a threat to the entire galaxy. As the battle raged on, Valen's mind raced. Could they still win this? The Galactic fleet was large, yes, but if Earth's ships kept up this level of assault, they could quickly decimate the fleet's remaining forces. The question was no longer about victory. It was about survival. If the Earth warships were allowed to continue their assault, it could spell the end of the Galactic fleet's reign. Valen turned to his second-in-command, his face grim. "Send word to the High Command. We need reinforcements, and we need them now. If we don't stop Earth here, the galaxy will never be the same." But even as he spoke, he knew that the tide of the battle was shifting. Earth had already made its mark. The Galactic fleet was no longer in control. The war that had once seemed so certain was now in doubt, and the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. The tide of the battle was turning, and Commander Valen could feel it with every passing moment. His once powerful Galactic fleet was being torn apart by a force they had never anticipated. Earth's warships were relentless, striking with a speed and efficiency that caught the Galactic commanders off guard. The battle, once thought to be a foregone conclusion, had become a fight for survival. On the flagship Titan, Captain Alina Mitchell stood resolute, her eyes never leaving the battlefield. The Galactic fleet was bigger, but they had one thing on their side that the fleet couldn't account for: the will to fight, the determination to protect their home. Mitchell had spent years preparing for this moment, and now every single crew member aboard the Titan was focused on one goal: crushing the enemy that had long believed Earth was weak. "Target their remaining capital ships," Mitchell commanded, her voice cool but filled with steel. "We take out their leaders, and the rest will fall." Her orders were swift, and the crew moved with practiced precision. The Earth warships, once just hidden shadows in deep space, were now fully engaged, their weapons tearing through the Galactic fleet's hulls with calculated force. The Titan, with its devastating array of guns, took the lead, raking fire across the shields of a massive Galactic command ship. Sparks flew from the damaged vessel as Earth's weapons found their mark, sending shockwaves that rattled the rest of the fleet. Despite the damage, Valen's flagship remained operational, but the damage was mounting, and Valen knew it. He had sent reinforcements from every corner of the galaxy, but Earth's ships were relentless, striking from unexpected angles, and the Galactic fleet struggled to mount any sort of organized defense. The fleet's enormous size seemed like a disadvantage now, as the smaller, more agile Earth ships darted in and out of their formations, picking off targets with deadly accuracy. The Galactic officers were starting to panic. Communications were sporadic, and many ships were already losing power, their systems fried by the brutal bombardments. Valen, however, remained calm. His mind raced, searching for a way to regain control, but even he had to admit that the balance of power had shifted. Earth's warships were superior in this battle, and the Galactic fleet was no longer in the driver's seat. "We need to break their momentum," Valen muttered to himself, watching helplessly as his forces continued to falter. "We can't let them take down the entire fleet." He turned to his tactical officer, a young man who had been through countless battles, but had never seen anything like this. "Are we in range for a counterattack?" The officer's face was pale as he glanced at the glowing screens before him. "Yes, sir, but we've lost over a third of our ships. We're being outmaneuvered." Valen's fist clenched. The reality of the situation was sinking in. His fleet, once feared across the galaxy, was crumbling under the assault. He had believed that Earth would be nothing more than a small inconvenience, a planet tucked away in the corner of the galaxy. But now, Earth was the one delivering the blow, and Valen had no choice but to adapt or be defeated. The command bridge of the Titan hummed with activity as Mitchell and her crew prepared for their next phase. The Galactic fleet was on the defensive, and this was the moment they had been waiting for. They would not let up. They would push forward until the last Galactic ship had been destroyed or driven off. "We've taken down 2 more capital ships," one of Mitchell's officers reported, a rare note of triumph in their voice. "Their defenses are weakening. We've broken their formation." Mitchell nodded, a look of satisfaction crossing her face. This was it. The fleet was starting to unravel. The Galactic fleet had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. "Prepare to deploy the boarding teams," Mitchell ordered. "We need to take their command ships. We can't just destroy them. We need their technology, their data. This fight is about more than just victory. It's about securing our future." The crew went to work immediately, sending out small teams to board the larger Galactic ships. The Earth warships, sleek and agile, continued their relentless assault, but now they were infiltrating the very heart of the enemy fleet. A few Galactic ships had already been boarded, and teams of Earth soldiers were now coming through the corridors of the enemy vessels, neutralizing the opposition and downloading critical intelligence that could turn the tide of the war. It was a tactic the Galactic fleet had never seen before, an invasion from within their own ranks. Meanwhile, back on the flagship Titan, Mitchell could feel the weight of the situation on her shoulders. She had led her people into the unknown, and now they were on the verge of achieving the impossible. The Galactic fleet had underestimated them, and that was a mistake they would not recover from. In the chaos of battle, Mitchell's thoughts flashed back to the early days of the war. The fear, the uncertainty, the long nights spent planning, preparing for this very moment. She had watched as Earth's leaders came together, as humanity united in a way that had never happened before. The idea of fighting back against the Galactic fleet had seemed impossible, but now they were proving it could be done. They were proving that Earth's strength was not just in its technology, but in its spirit, the refusal to be broken, no matter how hopeless the odds seemed. On the other side of the battlefield, Valen's desperation was growing. His fleet was crumbling, and reinforcements were still hours away. He had no more tricks left. Every maneuver he made seemed to be countered before he could even execute it. He watched as his most powerful ships were systematically destroyed, their wreckage floating helplessly in the void. There was no way to deny it anymore. Earth had not only fought back, they had won. Valen's hands tightened around the edge of his command chair. He could not allow it to end like this. He would not be the one to lose the war. "Prepare a retreat," Valen ordered, his voice low. "We will fall back and regroup. The battle is lost, but the war is not over." Across the battlefield, the Galactic fleet began to retreat, their once proud formation breaking apart. The Earth warships continued their pursuit, pushing forward with unmatched ferocity. It was a victory, yes, but it was only the beginning. Earth had proven its power, and now the Galactic fleet knew they were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. As the last Galactic ships turned to flee, Mitchell stood at the helm of the Titan, watching them disappear into the distance. The victory was sweet, but she knew the war was far from over. The galaxy had been shaken to its core, and Earth's role in it had only just begun. There was no going back now. The fight for the future of humanity had only just begun, and Earth's warships would be there, ready to strike again. The aftermath of the battle had left the galaxy in shock. The once mighty Galactic fleet, a force that had dominated the stars for millennia, now found itself fractured and on the defensive. The warships of Earth, though smaller in number, had dealt a crushing blow. The victory was more than just a tactical success. It was a message. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Galactic fleet would have to reassess everything they knew about the universe. Commander Valen sat in his quarters aboard the flagship, staring out at the endless expanse of space. His thoughts were a storm of frustration and disbelief. How had this happened? How had Earth's warships managed to break through their defenses with such precision? They had underestimated humanity in the worst possible way, and now they were paying the price. Valen's fingers tapped restlessly on the table in front of him as he tried to piece together the puzzle. The Earth ships weren't just advanced. They were smart. They knew how to exploit weaknesses, how to turn the tide of battle with calculated moves. His mind drifted back to the final moments of the battle. His fleet had been in retreat, ships scattering in all directions to avoid total annihilation. The Earth warships had been unrelenting, pursuing their enemies through the stars. The sheer speed and agility of their ships had caught the Galactic fleet completely off guard. Valen had been forced to give the order to retreat, a decision that gnawed at him. He had been in control of countless campaigns, each one ending in victory. But this time, he had been the one forced to run. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so helpless. As the retreating Galactic fleet regrouped, the full extent of their losses began to sink in. Dozens of warships had been destroyed, and countless others had been severely damaged. Valen's communications officer had informed him that Earth's forces were now in pursuit, not just of the remaining Galactic fleet, but of their very power base. The Galactic Empire had stretched across the galaxy for generations, but it was now facing a serious challenge. Earth's warships were not merely capable of defending their home. They were capable of bringing war to the doorstep of the Galactic Empire itself. Far from the front lines, on Earth's flagship Titan, Captain Alina Mitchell stood in the command center, surveying the damage reports from the battle. The victory had been hard-won, but it was a clear one. The damage to the Galactic fleet was immense, and Earth had proven that it could hold its own against a force that had once seemed unbeatable. Still, Mitchell knew that this was only the beginning. The Galactic fleet was still vast, and they wouldn't give up their grip on the galaxy so easily. "We've won the battle," Mitchell said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "But the war is far from over. The Galactic fleet will regroup, and when they do, they'll come at us with everything they've got." Her officers nodded in agreement, each one knowing that this was only a temporary victory. Earth's warships were fast, but the Galactic fleet had the numbers, and they had powerful allies spread throughout the galaxy. Earth would need to press its advantage, strike quickly, and exploit the confusion caused by the fleet's losses before they had a chance to regroup. Mitchell's mind raced with strategies. They had the momentum, but they needed to strike before the Galactic fleet could bring its full might to bear. The question was, how? They couldn't risk giving the enemy time to fortify their defenses. Earth had to hit hard and fast, targeting the heart of the Galactic Empire's power structures. "Send word to the fleet," Mitchell ordered, her gaze never leaving the holographic map of the galaxy that shimmered in front of her. "We're not stopping here. I want our ships to begin a push toward the core systems. We'll target their communication hubs, their command centers, anything that can cripple their ability to organize. We need to keep them off balance." As the orders went out, Mitchell turned to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Colonel Harris. "Prepare the boarding teams. We're going to hit their command ships directly. The faster we can seize control of their leadership, the faster we can end this." Harris nodded and immediately began coordinating with the ground forces. The Titan wasn't just a warship. It was a mobile command center, ready to deploy elite boarding teams anywhere in the galaxy. Earth's military had become more than just a fleet of ships. It had become a well-oiled machine, capable of taking on the might of the Galactic Empire itself. And now, they were going to take the fight to the heart of the enemy. While the Titan prepared for its next phase of the offensive, the remnants of the Galactic fleet were not idle. Valen had returned to his flagship, his mind now consumed by the gravity of their situation. He had made the difficult decision to retreat, but it was clear that the war was not over. The Galactic Empire was not going to let Earth's small victory go unanswered. "We've lost too much," Valen muttered to his officers. "But we can still win this. We will rebuild, we will regroup, and we will crush them." His officers, though shaken, nodded in agreement. The Galactic fleet was not known for surrendering, and Valen's pride was too great to let the battle end in defeat. But Valen knew they had to be strategic. They needed time to recover, and they needed to learn from their mistakes. Earth's warships had exploited weaknesses in their tactics, and it would not be long before Earth pushed forward with another attack. The Galactic fleet would have to adapt, improve its technology, and tighten its defenses. The challenge was immense, but Valen was not one to back down from a fight. "We'll call in reinforcements from the outer colonies," Valen said, his voice hardening. "We'll need every ship we can muster, and we'll need to find a way to counteract their warships. If they're going to come at us with speed, we'll meet them with force." Across the galaxy, the Galactic Empire's remaining forces began to rally. The fleets scattered in retreat were slowly starting to regroup in hidden systems, licking their wounds and preparing for a counterattack. They had underestimated Earth, but now they knew their enemy. They would not make the same mistake again. In the meantime, Earth's warships continued to push forward. The Titan led the charge, its weapons blazing as it advanced deeper into enemy territory. Mitchell stood at the command center, watching as the Galactic fleet's defenses began to crumble. The confidence of the Galactic commanders was faltering, and Earth's military was capitalizing on it. But Mitchell knew this was only a temporary advantage. The Galactic Empire would regroup and strike back. "We've dealt them a heavy blow," Mitchell said, her eyes steely with determination. "But we need to keep the pressure on. We can't give them time to recover. They'll be back, and when they do, they'll be more dangerous than ever. This is our moment to strike, and we can't waste it." As the fleet advanced deeper into galactic space, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The balance of power had shifted. Earth had proven its strength, but would it be enough to topple the Galactic Empire once and for all, or would the war soon take a darker turn? Only time would tell. The days that followed the victory were tense, filled with uncertainty and anticipation. Earth had struck a decisive blow, but as the remnants of the Galactic fleet began to regroup, Commander Valen's words echoed in the minds of everyone aboard the Titan. The war was far from over. Earth had made a powerful statement, but the stakes had just grown higher. Earth had claimed its place on the galactic stage, but now it had to defend it. On the Titan, Captain Elena Mitchell stood in the command center, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. Earth's warships had been pushing deeper into galactic territory, but they couldn't afford to stop now. If they gave the Galactic fleet time to recover, they would face an enemy even more determined to crush them. "We've hit them hard, but they're still out there," Mitchell said, turning to her officers. "They'll be rebuilding, and they'll come at us with everything they've got. It's not just about victory anymore, it's about survival." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Colonel Harris, stepped forward. "What's our next move, Captain?" "The fleet's defenses are still formidable, but they're in disarray. We have momentum. Should we keep pushing?" Mitchell thought for a moment, her fingers tracing the lines on the map. The Galactic Empire was vast, its influence stretching across countless systems. The Galactic fleet may have been crippled, but their empire remained intact. Earth had won a major battle, but the war itself was still in its early stages. Mitchell knew the true test would come when they faced the full force of the Galactic fleet's might. "We press on," Mitchell said with conviction. "We strike fast, we strike hard, and we keep them off balance. But we also need to be ready. They won't make the same mistakes again. We need to be prepared for their counterattack." She turned to her communication officer. "Send word to all fleets. We're moving forward, but we need to start coordinating with our allies. If the Galactic fleet starts to recover, we'll need support." As the message went out to Earth's allies in the galaxy, the tension in the Titan's command center only grew. The crew could feel the weight of what lay ahead. Their victory had been hard-won, but it had also made them the target of every military leader in the Galactic fleet. They had drawn a line in the sand, and the universe was watching to see if Earth would be able to hold it. Meanwhile, On the fringes of the galaxy, the Galactic fleet had begun its recovery. Valen, now more determined than ever, was assembling his forces. His initial arrogance had been shattered, but he had learned from his mistakes. The Earth warships had taken him by surprise, but he would not make the same error again. The Galactic fleet had retreated to regroup, but now they were preparing for a final push to retake the galaxy. They would rebuild their forces, upgrade their technology, and strike back with an overwhelming force. "We underestimated Earth," Valen admitted to his high command. "But we will not make that mistake again. We will come at them with everything we have. They've wounded us, but they've made us stronger." His officers nodded grimly, understanding the gravity of the situation. The Galactic fleet would need time, but Valen's resolve was unwavering. Earth had shown its hand, but the Galactic fleet was far from defeated. The galaxy was vast, and Earth was still a small player in the grand scheme of things. "We'll rebuild," Valen continued, "and we will take back what's ours." Earth's small victory was just that, a victory. The war is not over, not by a long shot. As the Galactic fleet worked to strengthen its position, the Titan and Earth's forces pressed forward. Their strike teams infiltrated Galactic strongholds, sabotaging supply lines and crippling critical infrastructure. Earth's warships, now more experienced and battle-hardened, continued to press their advantage, targeting weaker systems in the Galactic Empire. The Galactic forces were spread thin, trying to rebuild, but Earth's fleet never gave them a moment's respite. But it wasn't just the Galactic fleet that was watching. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread about Earth's victory. Allies of the Galactic Empire began to reconsider their loyalties. Some were frightened of Earth's newfound strength, while others saw the potential for a new order. Earth's actions were not just a message to the Galactic fleet, they were a beacon to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity had shown that it was capable of standing up to the greatest empire the universe had ever known, and the consequences of that revelation were far-reaching. Meanwhile, the tension between Earth and the Galactic fleet continued to rise. Both sides knew that the next battle would be the decisive one. It wasn't just about winning. It was about establishing dominance over the entire galaxy. The stakes were higher than ever. On Earth, the people were watching closely. The victory had filled them with pride, but the leaders of Earth's government were aware of the dangers that still lay ahead. They had won a battle, but they needed to secure their future. Earth had earned the respect of the galaxy, but they needed to ensure they could defend it. The Galactic Empire would not forget the humiliation it had suffered, and Earth needed to be ready for whatever came next. In the quiet of the Titan's bridge, Captain Mitchell found herself reflecting on the road ahead. The war had started with Earth's fight for survival, but now it was a fight for something far greater, the future of humanity. They had shown their strength, but now they had to show their resolve. There was no turning back. "We've taken the first step," Mitchell said quietly, almost to herself. "But the real war is still ahead of us. We can't stop now. Not when everything we fought for is on the line." Her crew, loyal and battle-tested, stood behind her. The Titan was more than just a ship. It was the symbol of Earth's resistance, of humanity's fight for its place in the stars. They had shown the galaxy that Earth was no longer a backwater planet to be ignored. They had proven they were a force to be reckoned with. But the war was far from over. As the Earth fleet moved forward, readying for the inevitable counterattack, the galaxy held its breath. The Galactic fleet was rebuilding, and Earth was pressing its advantage. Both sides knew that this final confrontation would determine the fate of the galaxy. Earth had fought for its survival. Now it would fight for its future.